Hi, I'm going to run through some of the material for the OME 2020 workshop on a mirror figure. I'm going to be working with some of these images, and I'd just like to point out that these images have some metadata that we're going to use in our figure, pixel size. They've got some tags associated with them, some key value pairs, and the channels have been named here. Some of this metadata could come from the acquisition itself, or you can rename channels here. I'm going to just use some filtering here by rating. I've previously rated some of these images so that these are my favorites. So I'm going to select these to make a figure. Okay, and I can open with a mirror figure in the top right here, or similarly, there's a context menu here, and I can also open with a mirror figure. Okay, so a mirror figure opens in a new window. It's a web plugin. Doesn't come with a vanilla install of a mirror. It's an extension you can add on. And these images, and I have them in the figure, I can move these around just by dragging and resizing them. So I can arrange them on the page. And there are some tools available. Let me select them all up in the top right here that allow me to align the width and height similarly for all these to make sure that all the panels are the same size, and I can align them to a grid so that it creates this typical spacing that you see in a figure with a little gap in between each one, and that's going to resize these a bit smaller. So I can drag to select multiple panels, or I can shift click to select particular ones, or in fact I can control A to select all of them. So I'm going to select these ones and use the shortcut keys of copy and paste to go and paste multiple times, and that will typically, if you copy a column of images, it'll paste it as additional columns. Okay, so I've got a whole grid of images, but I haven't exported these from a mirror. We're still fully within a mirror. We still have all the controls available to us. I've got rendering available on all 4 channels. I can turn on these channels, adjust the rendering settings. I can still go to a different Z section. So all the rendering that's available to me in a mirror is still available within the figure here. But some of the power that's really useful here is I can edit the settings on multiple panels at once. And typically, if you're comparing different images, you want to have the same settings across each of these columns. So I'm going to choose a color for this channel. These have got kind of out of sync, but I can turn all these off just by toggling these, and that's turned all these panels off. Let's just zoom in a bit here at the bottom. Okay, and then let's do the same for these other panels, these other columns. I can adjust the levels here as well if I want to boost the levels. If I want a particular panel to have different levels, I can just select it on its own. If I don't actually want to compare these absolute levels. Okay, for this third one, I'm going to turn on a different channel. Boost. Okay, and then this one I'll leave with all the channels still on. Let's turn on the ACA. Okay, So I've got the panels that I want laid out here, and I've been selecting each column in turn because I want each column to have the same settings. But in another case, I may want to select a whole row. So for example, in this one, if I want to change the Z section, I want the whole row to be synchronized. In some cases, for example, the magnification, the zoom, I want to select all the panels in the figure. If I'm adjusting the zoom, let's zoom in a little bit here. And this is kind of like a bit like cropping the image, but I haven't actually cropped it. I've still got all the image available to me. So if I select, again, one particular row, I can still pan around here, and it's synchronizing the viewport on those rows. Okay, so let's just resize that a little bit. Okay, so I've got my panels laid out. I'm going to go just selecting the right-hand column here onto the Labels tab. And I'm going to start just by simply adding a scale bar to all these panels. It's using the pixel size metadata to add that scale bar. I can add a label. The default size is 10 microns, and I can adjust this. Let's just undo that. And I can adjust the size of the label, the location. This is the position within the panel. Again, let's stick with the default, bottom right. And I can actually choose different units for that scale bar as well. Okay, let's add some other labels. I'm going to select the panel on the top left here, and I can manually add labels here by typing in a label, choose a size, position. Again, I can have the inside corners the same as the scale bar, or around the outside of the edges. So let's put on a left vertical and the color. So that's going to simply add that label to the panel, and then I can go through other ones like this, adding multiple labels if I wish. But what I can also do, let's just remove these, is I can use other metadata from on the image to create my labels for me. And let's choose tags. I'm going to select all these 4 and create labels from tags. And now I've got, for each tag on the image, I've got a label. I've got some labels here that I don't need, but I can remove those quite easily. This is actually removing that label from all of the panels, and the same for this one. That one. Okay, so I've ended up with the labels that I want. Another one I can use here is to the key value pairs, and let's just choose a different color so that's more obvious, and let's say top left. So this will give me an option of the various different keys. So I could do a time. I've actually also got mitotic stage on here, and I can choose whether the label is going to have the key and the value, or just the value. So this would achieve much the same thing. Okay, but I'm going to remove those ones for now. Another option I can use for creating labels, and I'm going to select all this top row of panels, is I can choose the channel names to create labels for each column. And I'm going to add this to the top, add this to the top of each panel. The color doesn't matter because it's going to use the color of the channels. So that's used the active channel for each panel to create labels. In this case, I've got three labels, and I can update these labels. So this fits the green label that's on two of these panels. I can edit that GFP insimp, and that's updating both of those labels together. Okay, so I've got some labels and some scale bars. Also in this right-hand panel, I can add some ROIs. So with just a single panel selected, I'm going to go into edit here, and I can just draw on some ROIs here, squares, arrows, lines, and ellipse. But I can also load ROIs. If I've got ROIs on the image in a Mero already, I can choose to load these. And these are on particular Z and T sections. So if I add that label, it'll actually update the Z and T index for me. If I can go back to the one I was on originally if I want to. Let's add a polygon. And okay, let's add an arrow. Okay. So that's added a bunch of different ROIs to the panel. Now, if I want to apply those similar ROIs across other panels, I can update, I can copy all the ROIs for the selected panel here, and then highlight other panels and paste those across many panels. If I just want to paste a particular ROI, so let's just open up this dialog again. I can just select a single ROI. So let's just select this rectangle, and so I can copy or use the keyboard shortcuts to copy. So that's just copied a single ROI, and I can actually use that if I want to paste just one region of interest across these panels. And then if I want to update it, I can select this panel and just reposition that one. Okay, I'm just going to make a bit more space here. Resize these. Okay, so I'm going to create another column here simply by copying this column here and pasting. So I've duplicated all the panels as well as their ROIs and labels, scale bars. But what I want to do with this column is show the zoomed in region for this rectangle for each panel. So if I go back to the central tab here, and remember before we were cropping just by using the zoom here, but I can also crop using a sort of traditional cropping view like this. And in this view, I can use any rectangles that are on the image as the coordinates for cropping, and also any rectangles that are copied to my clipboard as well, actually. Oh, actually, this is a rectangle coming from a Mero ROI itself. Okay, so I can crop according to this rectangle that's on the panel, and it's asking me if I want to remove the other ROIs, which in this case I do. So that removes the arrow and the polygon. So I'm going to do the same again for the other panels here. Again, I'm going to select just this panel and crop it, use the ROI that's on the image to crop and remove the ROIs. Let's do that again. Okay, so this is ensuring that the zoomed in view here matches the coordinates of that rectangle. If I wanted to move this and pan to a different location, and then update the rectangle here, I can do this by copying the crop region again, instead of and using that to paste the crop region as a new ROI, and that'll actually create an ROI for that region. So it's kind of going in the opposite direction. Let's remove that old one. Okay, so there's a few different ways that I can synchronize the ROI in the crop region. I can select these panels on the right here. You notice that the scale bar has very much zoomed in because it's still showing 10 microns. If I update that to 2 microns, okay, that's a better fit for that panel. Okay, so I've got most of the panels that I want now. I can save this figure. And give it a name. And that's updated the URL to point to this figure. I can save that, bookmark it, or share it with colleagues. And if they have permissions to view these images, they'll also be able to view this figure. I can open other figures that I've saved previously, and by default it's showing just my figures, but I can actually show figures belonging to all the other people whose images I have permissions to view. So, and I can filter here by name. So let's open previously saved figure. So this is a multi-page figure. So figures can support a number of pages, and you can move panels between pages simply by dragging them. Let's zoom in a bit here, look at some of these. So this is an example of a time lapse. This is one image through a bunch of time points. I can actually select all these panels and update the times for them at once, just by scrolling. This is incrementing the time for each panel, and you'll notice that the labels are also updating. Those are labels created by using the timestamp options, which create live labels that update. Another panel down here, this is a very large image showing multiple zooming levels through the same image. So this is one that's kind of 96,000 pixels by 45,000. So I can pan around this. Okay, let's go back to, so one thing that's particularly useful if I'm viewing a previously saved figure or someone else's figure is to be able to find the images in the original context. So if I select the info panel for a particular image, I can open it in the full viewer, and I can also browse back to show where it was in the web client, so I can see other images that were acquired in the same data set, or I can see the acquisition metadata, or I can download the image. So it keeps everything linked together. So I'm going to go back to the file we've already created. Don't save the changes. And I can export a file to in a number of different ways here. Export it as PDF, or I can export it as a TIFF, or actually create a new image in a mirror from the figure. Then that is available as a download, and it'll open it as a PDF. Oops. And okay, so that's opened in a different window, but it's downloaded a PDF which contains the figure and as well as an information page that links to the figure URL. Okay, so I've got a bunch of different images here, and we've created a particular layout for them. Often what people want to do is use the particular a defined layout to create to use that template for additional figures, or to add additional images using this template. So if I was to add let's remove this filter and go back to the original images. So if I was to choose a new image that I wanted to add to the figure, I can copy the ID for this image, or in fact, I'll show you in a second, I can copy that link, but let's, for now, just copy this ID. And I can add new images to the figure by using this Add Image button up here, and then put in the image ID. So, and I can bring in multiple images at once this way. But if I wanted to add this image as a new row to this panel, I have to go through all the steps we went through before, but there's a slightly quicker way I can do this. So let's just copy and paste to duplicate that row. And one thing I can do is to select a whole row and update the images that's within that row by editing the ID. So all those images have a single image ID. And if I edit that ID, I can again paste in the ID of the image I want to replace it with. And this is going to compare these two to see if they're kind of compatible and warn me if anything's slightly different. So I've got a different number of Z sections, but that's absolutely fine. And what that's done is replace the image that's in all these panels with the new image. So that's kind of using the existing layout as a template for new images. And if I wanted to, I could, with a whole set of newly acquired images, I could replace each one in turn to use the exact same figure as a kind of template for new data. That's possibly slightly laborious if you're doing that for a lot of images. So there's other ways that we can create or use a template layout to control the layout for multiple figures and to create figures that have the exact same layout. So first I'm going to give you an idea of how we're saving figures in Omero. And if I go to File, Export as JSON, so this basically shows the data that we're saving for a figure. And that's all the metadata for all the panels that are within the figure. So that's slightly verbose. In this case, we've got quite a lot of figures in our image. But this is useful partly for to see how figures are saved. Sometimes it's useful for debugging. I can also copy and save this locally if I want to save a copy of the figure, or for example, if I've lost connection to the server and I just want to make sure that my figures is saved. And so I can copy all that. And I can also use that to create a new figure from JSON data. So let me just do a little bit of editing here. So, okay, I'm looking for anaphase, so he's going to find that label. Let's imagine that I can edit this and okay, edit the label. I'm also, you can see in the same object here, there's some color. So let's edit that, create the new figure from this data. So I don't generally expect you to edit that JSON in this way, but what I'm trying to show here is that by manipulating the figure JSON, we can create a figure from that, and that's what we're going to do in a couple of other ways just now. So what you want to use as a reference here, if I Google for OME guides, and what we're going to use as a reference here is the OME web extensions and look under OME figure. So we've mostly been covering so far the material that's in this first link here, and now I'm going to go on to the second, which contains more information about how to create figures from scripting material. So what we're going to use here is a this link here is a useful description that describes that the file format of that figure JSON in a bit more detail, and so this can be used as a reference for creating figures from code. And what I'm going to show is an example of creating that figure layout in Python using a server-side script. So if I go back to my web client, let's again find our favorite images, and I'm going to select those, and we can run server-side scripts from the web client using the scripts menu up here. And the script I want to use is under this examples called workshop scripts, split view figure. Oh, okay, so this is unfortunately opened that dialog. I don't think that'll be in the view. I'm just going to open that dialog in a new tab so you can see that. Okay, so it's open. It'll open a dialog that contains the images selected, and I can view the script down here if you want to see the code that's creating that script. I've got a couple of different parameters I can play with here. Let's choose to make the labels for each row from the tags, and I can give it a name for figure. I could add different parameters here. Okay, let's run that, and that'll, I can see the script results here, and it says it's created me a new figure. If I go to the figure app and open, I'm going to see a new figure named accordingly, and it's used, or as I asked it to, it's used all the tags on each row to create the labels as before. So we've got all those tags, and it's done a slightly simplified version of the figure that we created before, but it's a kind of a one-click solution for creating a figure to a well-defined template. So I can easily create multiple figures to the same template, and that template is defined in the code. I'm going to run another example. Here's, I've got some FAP images, and what I want to show here is combining the creation of a figure with some simple analysis. So each of these panels have an ROI drawn on the bleach spot for the FAP, and we're just going to measure the intensity of the bleach spot over time and create a plot, and then create a figure of that. So in up here, I've got a simple FAP with figure script. Again, apologies, I'll put this in a new tab so you see it. Okay, so that's the dialogue. Again, there's no parameters here. I'm just going to run the script. And I can see the results of this in a second. Okay, so it's completed. If I go back to my figure tab and open, I may need to refresh to the list here, but it's created me a new FAP figure. And so for each of those selected images, it created me a new image in a mirror of the FAP plot, and it's added that image to the figure along with a sort of time lapse of those panels. So it's just an example of creating a figure as a result from running some analysis. I should also point out that it's, and we'll use this in a second, we've got some key value pairs, so the intensity of the bleach spot over time, these are the values that have got created and used in that plot. So T index over and intensity, that's key value pairs. And actually, if I refresh the data set, you'll see that the new plots are actually new images in that data set. Okay, so that's using scripts to create figures. It's I get a figure straight away, very quickly, from the selected images, and this is slightly more tricky if I want to apply different layouts to the figure with different images. So, for example, if I wanted to combine these FAP figure with some a different type of layout within the same figure, a split view figure, for example, I'm going to show another approach that I can use to more selectively apply a template within a figure. So first, I'm going to select a bunch of images here, and instead of opening with figure, I'm going to just copy this a link to these images. So this is basically a simple way of copying all the image IDs for these images, and this is how we add new images to a figure, again using this add image, and paste those in. Okay, so I've got my panels in the figure here, and again I can play with this layout. But if I want to apply a template to selected panels within the figure, I've got, okay, just this column now. So I'm going to actually do some scripting within the page itself, and this is a slightly more interactive way of controlling the layout. Okay, let's close these. So back in the page that we're looking at before, there's a link down at the bottom to link to a bunch of different examples for scripting of the layout of figures. So I'm going to try a couple of these ones. And there's a split view layout example. So what this is using is it's using JavaScript to directly manipulate the data model for that figure in the browser. I'm just going to copy all this and paste it into the browser. So if I right click somewhere on the page and inspect So I'll open the dev tools for the browser. I can also do the same thing through the menu at the top to open the developer tools. And I'm going to use the console here. So this allows me to, and if I start typing here, you can see there's a figure model element, and I can run various code on that. For example, gets selected will give me the currently selected panels. So currently there's no panels selected, but if I go and actually I want to select all of these 4 panels here. Okay, and if I rerun that get selected, now it's going to show me these 4 panels. So I can actually iterate through these. So for each of these panels, I can run a function. It's panel, and I can update the panels by calling set. So let's update. So and here's where having that data model reference before will be useful. It tells you all the different attributes of a particular panel. So if I wanted to update all of these to a particular coordinate, that's going to do that for me. So it's going to set the X. Or in fact, let's more obviously, let's set the X to 0. So this is one way you can see to set panels to a particular layout. And the changes that I make in the browser here, I can undo these changes. Just they're all added to the undo redo queue. Okay, I'm going to paste in the code that I copied. Again, I've got all these panels selected. And what this is going to do is go through each panel, and it's going to make a copy of the data for that panel. And then it's going to loop through the channels for that panel and create a new panel for each channel, offsetting to the right and activating a different panel, different channel in each panel. Okay, so I do that, and that immediately creates for me that split view figure layout. And I can use the same idea for manipulating any of the attributes. So I could add labels and all the other things that are available to me. I can use the same technique for enabling any attributes in those panels. Okay, I'm going to use one other example. If I go back to the panels here, so I'm going to use the figure FAP map annotation, which is a script that's designed to work for these FAP images that we've just been working on. And what this is going to do is actually load the map annotations. So let's remind ourselves that for these panels here, each panel has a map annotation of the time index and the intensity. And what I'm going to do is use JavaScript to load that data in the browser and use it to create a new label for every panel. So let's select all the FAP panels. I'm going to paste in this code. I'm going to add a label. Actually, I'm going to update this to top right, and I can update the color that we're going to use to create a label. Let's make them green. And so it's going to add a green label to the top right using the map annotations value according to the T index of each panel. So using the T index, it's going to go through the list of all those key value pairs and pick use the T index as the key, so the value will be the intensity at that time point. So let's do that. And you can see for each panel, it's added a label to the panel that shows the FAP intensity at that time point. So we can do quite a bit of interesting things using scripting in the browser. Okay, let's save that example. Okay, I think that's going to be everything for this workshop, and thanks for watching.